Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Mr. Jack, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Doing great. What about you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, man. I'm good. Thanks for joining me. Chris, for people who don't know who you are, could you give us a bit of an introduction, please?
Of course. So, my name is Chris Dahmen. For those who know me, I am currently the co founder at Hive, also known as HyveDA. Been in a space for quite a bit. I'd like to say about 7 to 8 years. I don't really count the years at this point. But weirdly enough, I started many, many years ago, back when I was living in China. So, I'm originally Canadian, French Canadian from Montreal. So if you catch sometime that some of my sentencing is bizarre, it's because it's not my first language. And yeah, so I traveled quite a bit around the world, spent many years in China where I really, really started to get deep in crypto. Um, and after that, just kept rolling all around the world, finally back to my own places. So yeah, I'm all about DeFi, I'm all about infra, I'm all about people relation, and this is what I do. So yeah.
Sounds fun. Could you give us a bit of a talk through of your career journey so far, and maybe some of the roles that you've held leading up to this point of you being a co-founder now?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, this part is interesting because normally when you ask this question to somebody who works in fintech, you get pretty much like a narrow answer that's always the same. Like it's prestigious university that leads into some type of like early job into high banking system, and then eventually they end up on Wall Street or any type of like highly organized, big corporation. And this path is very standard, but in crypto when you ask this question you get into a very, very bizarre adventure because most of the people who succeeded in this space have like the weirdest comeback. In my case, I used to be an helicopter engineer,
Okay.
so that was back, I would like to say, 10 years ago. I had a full-fledged career. I was traveling all around Canada, helping to kind of like design and fix helicopters. So that's most of what I was doing. And I hated this job. I hated this career. It was a good one, perfect to make enough money to raise a family, have a house, and have everything that everyone is theoretically seeking for. Um, but yeah, it was not for me. One of the big part was it's a job that you always did in isolation. So it's all about being with yourself and being in the forest. And if you're somebody who likes fishing and who likes to spend weeks alone with the mosquitoes and the trees, then it's the perfect job for you. But it was not for me as I'm a super social person. Um, and so yeah, eventually I just decided that like it was time for me to flip the switch and do something completely different. And that's at that time I had some very good friends of mine that were already nearby, let's say New York and Chicago, into more like, let's say, the Wall Street world. I had pretty much no backup at this point, but what I had was a pretty good mouth. So the ability to connect with people at a deeper level. And I was very, very motivated in meeting some intelligent people. And so at that time, it was very easy for me because of these friends to. I decided to move to Chicago for a while and met some of the friends basically that had like private fund management. And so for something like 2 years, I helped out a lot of these guys initially, just like writing some stuff, doing some translation, helping them build some courses, and whatever jobs that they had. Like I was kind of just helping them out of passion of it, and also because I was having the ability, like I said, to sit in rooms where I could learn and learn and learn about some new stuff, which I always strive to. So that was amazing. But the problem is, and again, I know a lot of people would hold a gun to my head saying this, but the Web 2 space or the traditional finance space, for those who spend time around it, there's a very evil, evil vibe around that. And this is a personal opinion. Keep in mind that I'm not speaking the truth. I'm just saying my own truth. But it's definitely a crazy space with a lot of competition, a lot of there's something vicious, and I just didn't like it because I love to communicate with people, sell if I have to sell, but I don't like to lie, and I don't like to play poker face, and it's all about that. So yeah, for a while that was interesting. Decided that this was definitely not the end game for me. Just took a flight, went all across the world, ended up in China, decided to stay there. And I just were very, very lucky at that time to meet quite a bunch of super interesting people that were, I'd like to say, crypto OGs. So people that started in 2012, 13, and 14. And these people just kind of like welcome me and say, okay, you have the basic knowledge necessary to understand the key pieces of finance. And that was enough for me to really get deep dive into the DeFi space. And I fall in love with everything that was lending, and at that time specifically liquid staking, uh, and all the key and components of DeFi. And that landed me a job as I was basically the right hand. So I could say co-founder, but that wouldn't be correct. I was more like the head of DeFi slash, yeah, let's say one of the core member of a project named Cien or Cyan, or people have tons of different naming for it. It's CIAN. It's a very successful project today. I think they have over $1 billion in TVL. So I was one of the core founding member and helped build the ecosystem, the strategies online. So it was all about DeFi. Um, that was fantastic. And eventually I upgraded to, after like 3 years of this project, I decided to try something completely different. I was very curious about AI, obviously, at that time. And again, it's always this mentality where I try to learn what I don't. And one thing that I didn't understand was AI, was general compute, was all this, let's say, more techie stuff that bridged the world between Web 2 and Web 3. And so I decided I know nothing about that. I'm only a DeFi geek at this point. Let me learn some of this stuff. And so I founded a company that was basically trying to build some infrastructure in the Web 2 world, but tokenize it in the Web 3 world. So somewhere of a slash, I would like to say, between Deepin and AI and RWA. So the core idea was to work with the Dubai government, quote unquote, like royal family, but also like the Japanese government, to establish some supercomputers infrastructure in real life and tokenize the return and the investment funnel throughout Web3. So that was super interesting, but I didn't do that for super long, for some reason that I may expand on later on. But at the end of the day, I just met one of the most incredible person that I had the pleasure to meet in this space, a man named Dawi, who became my co-founder, or to be exact, I became his co-founder because he was the one with the architectural brain needed to spawn this beautiful infrastructure project that we're working on today. And that's it. I pretty much highlight the last 15 years of my life, but that would be the path with some very minus, let's say, shortcut.
Sounds cool. Sounds like that like curiosity that you've had has really like helped you get into those positions, right? Like always wanting to learn, always wanting to explore something new, and it sounds like a real key skill that someone needs to learn, really.
Yeah, well, it depends, right? I say that every person has a different mentality and different dream. Um, and that is something that I believe wherever you live or whatever, what's your age, I think it's very clear. You can clearly depict in someone if their dream, for example, is just to settle down. And I have a lot of friends like that who still to this day pretty much always had the same career, and they live in the same place since they were young almost. So, they moved the house next door and they're super happy, to be honest. They got a dog, they got a kid, and that's it. They don't aspire to do some funky things. Certainly not go live in China. Is a high level of curiosity, but certain people will also call that dementia to some extent. My mom was not sure I was okay in the head when I decided to say, you know what, I got a good career, I got a successful life, I got a good job, I got a house, I got a car. let me sell all this shit and just take a one flight ticket to China, not knowing what I'm going to do, not knowing where I'm going to live, and I don't even speak the language. So curiosity is definitely a tool that can play phenomenal. Well, basically, that can bring incredible results in your life. But after that, it depends if you're about that life or no.
Yeah.
So, to your answer, I think yes, but it depends who you are.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, and with Hive DA at the moment, am I right in saying that you're on the like the growth side for the project? Is that like your main focus, you specifically right now?
That would be correct. Yeah. So, quote unquote, I guess super officially, my title would be co-founder. But again, it's just a title. In essence, there's three of us in this team, like really making the foundation layer of this team. There's Rick, who's mostly responsible for everything that is more organizational. Sorry, English is failing me here. Basically, regarding the organization, how to deal with everything that requires some type of organization, as well as the legal side, the paper side, lawyers and stuff, which is not my forte. After that, Dawe is would be wearing pretty much the CEO hat. Sorry, as well as the CTO. So he's the one that designed this whole crazy architecture that we're working on, and so he's a data freak. Always has been since he's a kid. This guy got a pretty incredible story as well, but he started like deep into the tech space when he was 13, but like deep. Uh, so he's kind of a crack. He's very young, younger than me, probably 10 years younger than me, but we pretty much has like the same length of professional career, which is insane to say.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, and so he's in charge of all the product, and my position then would definitely be everything regarding the ecosystem, finding the people that will bring tons of money inside of our protocol because we need so to secure, let's say, the crypto economic layer of the engine that we're building. But after that, finding the people that we would be building on, so the partners, you know whatever it is, basically that regards relation, building trust, building business avenues. That pretty much would be my realm. Correct.
Cool. This might be quite a hard question to answer, so hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot too much with this. Could you give us a bit of a crash course on what makes or how to make yourself a successful head of growth, chief growth officer? Like, could you talk us through that a little bit? Give us a crash course in the actual role itself and how to be successful at it.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, I guess again, this is interesting because if you were to ask this same exact question to somebody working in TradFi, there's very different method, I believe, that are used to quote unquote build a network, build relationship. Um, and it's definitely not something they're going to teach you in school, at least how to do it in Web3. But the core, yeah, let's put it this way. I think that the most essential part of this job boils down to 3 points. The first one would be the knowledge. So, whatever you're doing, whoever you're going to be talking to, whether it is a selling call, whether it's just to make friends, if you are to work in a space that you enjoy and you want to make friends with people in high places, to some extent, you got to be able to know what you're talking about. Because otherwise, what happens is you fall in this very easy trick where you're trying to sound smart, but you don't know what you're talking about. And the smarter people are, the faster they're going to detect that you're full of shit. So normally having knowledge is always good to some extent. So if you care, for example, in Web3 about DeFi, just get on your seat and deep dive some protocol white papers and try to understand what's going on in the space. So yeah, this one is pretty obvious. Knowledge is important. The second part I'd like to say is definitely your network. And by network, what I mean is, when you start, it's very difficult because your network normally is going to be near zero. Um, but after that, since your knowledge is near zero and your network is near zero, the only way that you can really come to, let's say, a foundation that is good enough to build on is to make some friends. And this part, like I say, is clearly not a something that they will teach you in university or anything, but a lot of it boils down to that. Most of the successful builders that I know in this space, they all have something in common. It's people who are has a lot of hunger about making things work, so they work very hard. But the second thing is the fact that they're able to sit in a room with pretty much anyone and have a phenomenal conversation, not only about technicalities, but about life. And that is something that normally between founders or head of growths, people that normally are the one leading a lot of the partnerships, um, you find that a lot of these people are just genuinely incredible person that you can sit in a room and talk for hours and just forget that there's business on the table. And when you're able to develop that, then after that, it doesn't really matter what you're selling because there's already a connection point. And people that are your friends will be super willing to introduce you to somebody else who might be in high places just because they know that, you know what, you're a fun guy, you're really cool to talk to. I enjoyed this conversation. Let me introduce you to this other friend who, whatever his position is, might be from the same type of vibe, or have some similar interest. And therefore, it just becomes the same way that if you go in a party and you get introduced from a friend to another friend to another friend, just because the vibe is right. In this business, it works. It genuinely works. You're going to get into places, talk to some nice people. They're going to remember you. They're going to be willing to talk to you anytime. And if they have to introduce you to another friend, then they will do so. And so that helps. And the third aspect, which I think is the most important, is, well, no, equally as important, I'd say, is not be shy. Yeah, not be shy. It's very badly titled. But when it comes to this space specifically, a lot of time you're going to have business ideas. For example, you're thinking about, I don't know, you want to do a partnership with Lido, okay, or Aave, some of the biggest protocol in the world. And you think like, okay, those people are incredibly powerful. I don't know how to start the conversation. Nobody will really introduce me to them, and I'm insignificant. So how would I approach these incredibly powerful people with my small project? And so basically, you create some psychological barriers not to do so. And I think that one of the biggest drive that a lot of successful BDs in this space have is they're not scared. They're not scared for all the previous reasons that I mentioned because they know what they're talking about, and so they're confident to talk because they have a good vibe and they know that even if the business call doesn't go well, there's still a way to potentially become friend and catch on in an event later on, or just have another call because guess what, you care about that, I care about that, that conversation was fun, let's do it again. And it's not so different with the people that work in those high companies. They're just genuine people who care, who are passionate. uh, the bigger the company, normally the more passionate and the more drive those people have. And so if you can share that you care about that and you just have some great ideas, then don't hesitate, just go, just shoot some DMs or do whatever is necessary to establish a communication, and from there you'll see. And sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, often it doesn't work at first, and it's perfectly fine. You now at least they know who you are, and eventually you just cross path again in another chat or whatever, and you say, "Hey, we met." You know, conversation was not fluid the first time, but at least I know who you are. You know who I am. Yeah, sure. And now it's easier. It's easier. So yeah, I think those would be my three advices that normally would lead you somewhere.
I like that. I like that a lot. So that's so yeah, grow your knowledge, grow your network, and just don't be shy about reaching out to people that you want to partner with. I think that's
There you
three
go.
really good pieces of advice. Um, Out of interest, what do you reckon when you have created some like great partnerships and gone in front of the right people? Do you tend to find that it works Which one, out the second and the third one, between either your network and just not being shy and reaching out to people, which do you think works better in Web3?
Hmm. Well, in essence, I think that, yeah, it's complicated. I really want to be objective here, but I'd like to say that every single one is as equally as important. Not being shy, perhaps, is the most important, and knowledge, right? So you can be a nobody saying that, let's say you don't know a lot of people, but you can build something extraordinary and know every piece of it on the tip of your finger. So obviously, there's going to be passion when you speak about it. Um, and if you have the ability and to reach out, so basically the third point is complementary to the second point, which is if you have a really great network, introductions are going to get easier and easier, right? Because I want to reach to this very powerful guy. If I just go in his DM on Twitter or on Telegram or whatever platform, the worst one probably being LinkedIn, you're just going to be reaching out in a DM and it's going to go nowhere because this guy is going to automatically scan you. This is what I do every day when some new people scan me on Twitter. I would look like how many people that I know that I followed who are friends of mine also are connected to this person. If it's zero, normally it's very likely that I'm not going to be paying a lot of attention to this message. The same thing goes on LinkedIn, even though LinkedIn is so incredibly botted that even though you have 50 friends in common, it's very likely that I'm just going to, and I apologize if I did that to some great people, but I mean, it's the reality. You got to filter out at some point. And the same goes on Telegram. If we share no groups in common, that you're not in like those, it's harder. You got to divide your attention. But at least if you have the courage to reach out, the possibility that you're going to be lending into some valuable conversation, and specifically if you can demonstrate quickly that you know what you're talking about, and by knowing what you're talking about means you also understand what they do, right? So I can know everything about my business and I call you to do business with you and I don't understand anything of what you're doing, then the call is going to be 5 minutes and it's done. So you got to be able to know what they're doing, know what you're doing, understand what's the problem, understand what's the issue, how your problem, how your whatever you're selling or whatever you want to partner up uh, provides some type of solution, and the path to said solution. So what do you need? You need money, you need time, you need support, you need a friend. You got to be clear on these things. And if you can be extremely direct, tack, 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 then you can definitely grab attention. So perhaps the network is less necessary if you're really, really wise and that you're not afraid to reach out, I would say. But the other is kind of like the cherry on top. If you have a network, then everything is just easier, obviously.
Yeah, they complement each other well, I think, for sure.
I'd agree.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, and you mentioned there, obviously, it's important to understand what the other person does. Could you talk us through it? Like, talk us through HyveDA, like what you guys building. Could you talk us through the project in a little bit more detail?
Of course. And the irony about this question is I found so incredibly complicated to introduce this project, not because I don't know what we're doing. So now I would basically be lying, saying you got to know what you're talking about, and then I'm saying like it's complicated. The reason I say that is because we are building something that do not resemble anything in the space. It's a combination of different things, and so when explaining this project, what is very easy sometimes is you can use some example or some analogies to say like here's what we do, and people very quickly understand what's going on. In our case it's a bit more complex, but I'll try to keep it as less technical as I can. Essentially we are building a data layer. So the right word would probably be a data fabric, and what it means is that we are trying to bridge a critical issue in the space. So the blockchain industry is phenomenal for one thing, a term that everybody loves and everybody hates at the same time, which is the term decentralization. So why caring about the ledger technology is because it is quote unquote decentralized, right? So this is the big difference. Instead of using the bank, so the bank, they decide they don't like you for any reason, there's a lot of way that your money can be frozen up. Whereas in the blockchain, as long as you have your ledger, you don't need to KYC. You can go from China to Canada to Indonesia, doesn't matter. Your money is always with you in your pocket, and you're free to uh, you know offload as much money as you want. It's yours. So for all the great reason, we like decentralization. However, the blockchain itself, and not all blockchain are decentralized. Let's be very clear. But for those who are decentralized, let's take Ethereum, uh, it is phenomenal. And each blockchain has something called well, there's a certain data function, right? So in the Ethereum for L2s, for example, there's something called the blob space, and it's a way to kind of like verify the transaction on chain, to kind of delay until a block is created. So you have an L2 that there's tons of transaction happening in a parallel space of the Ethereum layer, and until all the transaction get rolled up and sent into the Ethereum blockchain and the block gets created so that the data is safe forever, you need to have some type of traceability of like what's going on inside of this blockchain so that the state of the blockchain can keep on operating. And so that's why the term data availability, which is this function of the blockchain to have like kind of a constant memory of what's going on before the block really gets created. And so that's now it's written forever. Um, so you need this traceability, this verifiability at all time, or you can call it transparency at all time, that everyone can go and check the status of the chain at all time, whether or not the block was created. Now, this is a very like a vulgarization of what data availability is, but Hive, in essence, is a combination of that and what is also called transient object storage. Now, transient object storage refers to, and this is the issue that I was trying to introduce, to AWA S3. So I'm sure you already heard of AWA, Google Cloud. There's another very popular one named Cloudflare R2. So these solutions, what they do is they allow for an enormous transact of data to get stored and be accessed and read in real time extremely fast. Now, the whole reason why I made this very complex introduction is to explain that in blockchain, the blockchain mechanism and the data availability layer and everything that relates to the blockchain data is efficient, but is far from being efficient enough and cheap enough. And it doesn't matter if we're speaking about like the high throughput blockchains like Solana, or there's names like Mega ETH where you say, oh, it's so fast. It's like, it's fast, it's cheap, but it's not nearly fast and cheap enough. And let's say the finality is not fast enough so that you can really thrive for some high throughput application, like for example, AI. So there's tons of projects like AI, like Gamify, like Deepin, treasury management. All of these have enormous amount of data that they do not store on chain. And the reason why they don't do that again is because if they were to use on-chain transaction, even though a blockchain is cheap, it would probably cost them $40,000 a day just to transact this basic data that they have inside of their system. So what do? They use centralized solution such as AWS S3, Cloudflare R2, and Google, right? They have some functions of that. And so what I just explained here is the fact that you have this beautiful decentralized layer that we all using, and we say we care. And so we build on top of it saying that our product is decentralized. But the reality is, and I'd like to say about 90% of the project are using centralized solution to compensate for the weaknesses of the blockchain. And in essence, it's a problem. And there never really was a solution that is able to effectively replace these centralized components in a way that is decentralized. And it took us a better part of 2 years to really, really confidently say, like, okay, we did it. We came up with this project, and now it's about to go out. But in essence, that's what we created. So it's a replacement layer for quote unquote data availability and transient object storage that can act as a realistic replacement for centralized hot transient object storage. In Yeah, so we basically cut this undesirable bridge that exists between Web 2 and Web 3. In essence, this is that. I think it's a very bad, uh, perhaps too long of an introduction, but like I say, it's a complex subject to introduce in few lines, unfortunately. Otherwise, people just have no idea what you're talking about.
That's good. I think the introduction is good. I've
Oh,
always wondered.
I appreciate
Or,
it.
yeah, no, I've always wondered, to be honest, how that's worked, like where that data or how that data is stored, so that you can validate transactions on the blockchain before like app blocks have actually been uh, created. So yeah, your explanation made sense. It made sense to me anyway. So, and I'm not the most technical person in the world. So, yeah, I think you've done a good job at explaining it there.
This is beautiful. I do really appreciate that, Jack, because to be honest, that's one of the challenges when you're building something like not even a text is complicated, but there's some projects that are fairly simple to explain, and that I consider to be, it's hard to explain that without getting incredibly technical. And so the challenge for me is how to explain it in different languages and at different level of technicalities. And yeah, I was trying to kind of like make a long explanation of like, here's the base functioning, here's the issue, here's how you fix it. But it requires quite a bit of time, unfortunately, to do so. But I'm very glad that it sticked.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no, that's
glad,
good.
glad it made
And I
sense to
guess,
them.
to be honest though, I guess your product would be quite a almost like quite a B2B type product. Like you're dealing with a lot of developers, right? Like guys who are actually building blockchains, creating blockchains. So a lot of those guys would be used to dealing with the technical language anyway. Like, do you have to like dumb the language down for normies? You don't, people like me, like don't understand like super deep technical stuff, or because I guess if
Uh,
your audience understands it, it's probably okay, right?
yes and no. You'd be surprised. Like a lot of the calls that I go on, because that's the thing. Okay, so the complexity is that, in this long introduction that I made, I emphasized the fact that about 95% or 90% of the project currently building in Web3 are using to some extent AWS S3 in the background to compensate for the data needs. And so what it means is that have to realize that a lot of the project in blockchain, the people that represents it, like when I called somebody, let's say I reach out, I don't want to say a name, but I reach out to a project. I don't get to call to the I don't get to have the phone with the CTO on the first call. So most often you're gonna find, at this level I'm gonna reach the head of BD or perhaps sometime the CEO. And the complexity is that you'd be surprised. A lot of the people have a vision of what they're building. They understand what is the value proposition. They understand how to combo up. They're not used to talk of the tech side of it. And if anything, very often they're gonna know the tech on the blockchain side, but they don't know the side that they compensate on. And so very often people say, "Oh, I'm building on this blockchain, and this blockchain is an L2, and it has like that amount of throughput and that amount of transaction per second, and it is secure because of this." But they might not necessarily know if they're using AWS S3 in the background or no. And very often, I find myself in a room with person when I'm saying like, "Look, I understand what you're doing. I can ensure you that you're using that because it's impossible that you're using blockchain for the needs that you have." And people are like, "No, I don't think we use that." And I'm like, "Yes, I think you do. Go ask your CTO." And people are like, "Oh shit, we do use AWS. What the fuck? I thought we were decentralized." And it's like, well, it's not really, it's not, you're not like lying to anyone because most people do. Like I say, it's a taboo. A lot of people have to compensate. So it's not as easy as you think. Sometimes I have to go in room and, like I say, force my way to say like, look, I bet that you don't know that you're using some centralized pieces to run because your CTO would not like to mention it, but everybody does to some extent. Not everybody, but a lot of the projects that are outside DeFi, for example, are using some type of centralized tech to, like I say, do their business in a way that is efficient. Specifically at the beginning, when you're not making a lot of money, you don't want to be spending no $3,000 per day just for data.
Definitely. And I guess if you guys can, and I guess the challenge is to try and make it as cheap as the major providers like AWS
There
and
you go.
Cloudflare and stuff, right? That's the trick. I guess a lot of
Yeah.
people would love to be using like fully decentralized tools to build their protocols, but as you said, like cost is a big factor, right? Especially if someone's just starting out, might raise a bit of a seed round or something. They don't have bottomless pockets to pay
Mhm.
for all this stuff. So yeah, if you guys have solved it, sounds like a good sounds like a good challenge to have solved.
Yeah. Well, again, sometimes I'm saying stuff and I hate myself for saying that, but I do genuinely believe that if properly implemented, we can be looking at some what we call a paradigm change, paradigm shift. Um, because yes, we're talking about like a technology, a replacement technology that, and it took us a lot of time to ensure that that was possible, but to make it as cheap as AWS. Um, but most specifically, what it would create is what it calls this economic flywheel. Whereas see Web3 as like this bubble, right? And we have like this money inside of this bubble living there from fees that you're paying to Ethereum when you do a transaction, and this fee remain in Ethereum. It goes to the operators, and the operators they go on DEX and they do stuff. So as long as the money is kept inside, it's good for us. But as long as when money gets extracted outside of Web3, it's obviously not great. And so what happened in this current situation is, like I say, let's say 90% is the right number, then 90% of the application are paying, I don't know, I'd like to say perhaps $1 million a week to AWS S3 Cloudflare R2. And this money just gets extracted forever, never to be seen. And so what we have the ability to do now is to make this satellite and this engine that lives in peripheral. I'm trying to say too much funky words here, but living within, on the border of Web3 and Web2, is able to provide this alternative solution. And one of the key component of Hive is that not only it offers decentralization and the verifiability and all the beautiful things that we love about this industry, but what it does also is all the fees that goes to Hive gets re-injected directly into Web3 because we don't make profit as a company. The way it is, it's called a protocol, and a protocol is quote unquote a decentralized, kind of a non-profit organization. And so essentially, all the fees, let's say we have like $10,000 that go within the engine for a day to pay for the data need, all these fees go back to the operators, all the decentralized operators that runs it. So none of them is us. Contrary to a lot of blockchain where people run their own nodes, it's not the case for us. We run on symbiotic universal staking. And so it's all decentralized operators that work together, and people like you and I that go to the operators and say like, look, I care about Hive. I think it's a great project. I want to support it. And then you provide some of your assets that get distributed amongst these operators. And so basically all the money that goes to Hive then gets paid back to the operators and the stakers, 100% of it. So then you would create this paradigm shift where the bubble itself wouldn't have to leak all this money outside of Web3, sending to Web2 forever, but could instead keep all the economic value within itself. So yeah, it's an exciting thing, but again, it's definitely a challenge to try to introduce this brand new paradigm and make it a reality and convince people and explain to them how it works and why it works. But it's a fun challenge, and that's why I'm here. So
For sure, man. Oh, I'm sure you'll do it. You're passionate about it, and it sounds like you got the right people in place. So I'm sure you guys will do it.
I hope I'm able to demonstrate the passion that I was talking before. Like I say, if you care about what you're doing, it's going to be easy to pitch. I know I was supposed to explain it for perhaps 5 minutes, and I went for 15 for no reason. It's just because it's fun to explain for me. I goddamn love it, and I find it challenging for all the good reasons.
No, it's good. It's good. I think no, it's a good mission, and yeah, no, it's good for you to talk us through it. Um, you mentioned a few things there about the actual like industry itself.
Hmm.
Um, just to divert slightly away, a question that's come to mind, like, what is there anything that you think people should be aware of about the industry overall before they become a part of it? Like, say if someone's looking to join and get a job in the industry, they haven't worked here before. Um, is there anything you'd like to make them aware of that you think is super important that they need to know before coming?
Hmm. Mm, well, yeah, that's a great question because now my mind is just bombarded with different thoughts. Um, the first one is I'll just go as it come because I think I don't have any structured answer for that. One of the greatest thing about Web3, which I love, is the fact that, for example, I got a cousin, and I got some. Let's just say my cousin here. He's working. Like, he's been studying in finance, right? So he's at university learning account and stuff. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's related to finance. And he knows nothing about Web3, right? And he was telling me like, "Oh, I'm gonna finish university, and after that, I probably get like this part-time job at a bank, and it looks horrible, and I'm depressed already thinking about like me spending. I think yeah, it's just it sucks. It's like hours on the desk trying to call people that don't want to talk to you, and you're trying to sell them stuff that they don't need, and it's just horrible. And he hates it. And I told him, I said, listen, man,
Sounds like recruitment.
yeah, it sounds like yeah, would you like to join my church? And it's like, but you're getting paid, and it's this very strict environment with people who are all dressed like they're the president, and everybody thinks they're more important than the other. And my cousin is a humble guy, doesn't want to play this game. And so one of the point that I wanted to say about this industry is what is the most beautiful thing is that you don't need specifically to have like some very high degrees in order to find your way in this industry and find your way in a significant fashion in this industry. Because like I say, a lot of what matters is your knowledge, your passion, your network, and eventually as well like your ability to just charge and make your way into people. If you have some of these points, like let's say 2 out of these 4 points that I've mentioned, it is only a matter of hunger how you're going to be able to find your way into a significant career in this space because it is new, because it is still yet unexplored. It's not something that you can learn quote unquote at university, or perhaps now there's certain places that teaches that. But the point is that it doesn't matter what's your background. If you have the desire to learn about this industry, you can find a way in and work with very respectable companies within 2 or 3 years if you really put the work in and learn about some specific. You specialize yourself in something. So you care about lending platform, just learn all the lending platform, learn the mechanism, go and chat with people, and boom, voila, you're gonna find a job, which is not something that you can say about being a doctor, being a lawyer, being a banker. Like you have to go through a very narrow, predefined process. So that's probably the best thing that I can say about this industry, and it's not a warning. There's obviously some warnings, but I would say very briefly, some of the warnings is regulation. It's not a space that is clearly defined. So if you live in a place like I live right now in Canada, you got to be aware that it's going to be tricky. There's some tricky line that you need to navigate. How to declare your money, how to not, red flag the government, because as soon as you mention crypto, they still think scam. And it's like, well, it's not, but it's the old school mentality. These people, in high offices, most of the time, they don't know nothing about the technology. And so they just stick to the story they read in the newspaper 4 years ago saying that some traffickers were using Bitcoin. So, yeah, that's the thing you got to be aware. Regulation are tricky.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, and that varies quite a lot, right, across the world. Wherever you are and wherever you're trying to get into it, the regulation will be completely different, probably. And I think that's quite a it can be quite a tricky thing to learn, probably. Like, is there anywhere that like lists like certain regulations in different countries, like what you need to watch out for, what you don't, what does alert people, what doesn't, like this kind of thing? There probably isn't really, unless you just Google it and
Well,
read a ton of articles about stuff.
I mean, when it comes specifically to crypto, I'm afraid, and again, I don't call myself a regulation expert, but I'm afraid that there's no whitelist board or chart you can go on and just see if your country is like friendly to it. Because there's always some false reading. If I look in Canada, for example, they're gonna say like, oh, there's like this setup, and like we're welcoming crypto to some extent, and you're going to read some very different news. One place they're going to tell you it's all good, the other is going to tell you it's all bad. And then you don't know, and then you ask your lawyer or you ask your accountant, because that's what you do, right? And they tell you, to be honest, I only know one guy that was super wealthy in crypto and he left the country. So you're like, well, okay, no. And so it's very difficult. And I'd like to say the best way to know if it's like viable or not is just, again, start learning, go into communities, go into discords, on Twitter, and you're going to find some information there. And eventually you're going to meet some people in your surrounding area that are doing similar things or care about similar things, and you're going to be asking them some advice. And some will tell you, well, I know this person that does it this way, I know this person that does it this way, and eventually you're going to find a path. It's not incredibly complicated. There's always a way. It's just that you're going to be paying a lot. That's all. Taxes are very hungry when it comes to crypto.
Yeah, definitely. Depending on where you are in the world,
Of course.
some places better than others.
Of
You
course.
mentioned you mentioned there about your cousin. I think you said like looking to get into crypto. Um,
Yeah.
Again, this might be quite a difficult question. Hopefully, not putting you on the spot too much. If you were to then advise your cousin to give him a bit of a step-by-step guide on this is how you get that job in the industry,
Hmm.
what steps would you tell him to take? Like anything that springs to mind?
Well, yeah, it's not a challenging question because I think I did exactly what you just said probably a month ago.
Okay, fine. All right,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. This
Talk us through it.
conversation, yeah, this conversation was early, and it was exactly what you think it was. Like I say, cousin sit down with me, and he's like, "Look, I almost finished this degree, and I'm already depressed thinking about it. What's my career path? It's going to be because I have some friends a bit older than me. They're already there, and everybody hate their life. And it's like, what's going on, Chris? I see you're doing weird things. I see you're traveling all around the world, having fun, meeting cool people. How do I do that?" And the answer, like I say, I kind of already layered up, but if I try to structure my answer here, it would be, first of all, know what you care about. You got to become good in one thing, because crypto is incredibly complex and incredibly diverse. So crypto is not just about, you know, Bitcoin, or it's not just about NFT. There's much more out there. So you got to find something that interests you, because again, otherwise you're never going to be learning anything if it doesn't interest you. But if it can be DeFi, so DeFi is like traditional finance but implemented in a way that is decentralized and way more modular. So you have tons of ways to create money by, for example, if you're on the dexes and you put your asset in a place and it combines to another asset, and the more people transact, the more you make fees, and then you can take this token and you can tokenize it and put it in a staking, and then it will go into restaking, and then you can loop this restaking. There's incredible ways to be, how to say, imaginative, creative would be a better word, on what to do, but you have to care about that, right? If you don't care about numbers and you hate finance and you hate to make money, who does, but you know what I mean. Like DeFi is not the thing for
Yeah.
you because it's very complex and it's very diverse. So you got to learn tons of different mechanisms and how they interact together. But if you do learn DeFi, oh god, you're in for some fun because now you know the foundational pieces of this technology, and after that you can pretty much be relevant in any room. But if NFT is your jam, then just learn everything there is to know about NFT. And so, number one, find what you care about, right? Find something that passionates you, whether it is DeFi, NFT, AI, whatever it is. After that, try to find the project that are the most relevant in this space. So if it is DeFi, for example, then you would like to learn about Aave, which is the biggest lending platform. You would like to learn about Lido, which is the biggest LSD platform. You would like to learn about Uniswap, which is the biggest DEX. You would like to learn about so on and so on. So try to familiarize yourself with some of the most successful business in this realm. Now, once you understand how they work and how they collaborate with each other, you're going to have a very, very good sense of um, basically how this whole scheme is working, right? Now, the third step I would say is get familiarize yourself with the ecosystem. So that would be specifically go into their respective Discord, which is a place where people meet and talk. You know, whatever there is to talk within this community. So often it's going to be about some changes that are incoming, and people are voting to take decision in what we call a decentralized autonomous organization or a DAO. People gather up and they discuss, challenges and solutions and ways that we can implement them, and blah 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 blah. But if you get to be part of this conversation, you obviously very rapidly going to start to understand how those operations are working, and you're going to start making some friends. And so again, you learn about your passion, you get to learn some of the biggest name, then after that you find ways into the community so that you really can understand how they operate within the inside, and as well as meet some of the people. And then after that would be number four, which I think is the most critical, is you try to find your first job. And so now leveraging what you know and the people that you know within the inside and understanding the mechanism, you might not be able to work with these big companies from day one, but you can definitely find some knockoff of these companies. So for example, Aave being the biggest lending platform, now there's a new blockchain that will have their own lending platform. This whole lending platform is obviously not going to be as successful as Aave, but they're going to be using some similar mechanism because most lending platform are to some extent copying either Aave or Morpho or some of the other, and they're just copying their code base and they're putting it out there. Now these teams, they need people who understand their project, but most of the time, because they're a new project, they're kind of obscure, nobody really knows about them. The people they get access to, you're going to find some people, that have perhaps some experience in blockchain, but they don't really understand how a lending platform works. Like there's not many expert of lending platform. But if you are, then you just knock at their door and say, look, I already know everything about Aave. I know everything about Morpho. I know everything about all these other lending platform. I understand exactly how yours is going to work. Do you have a job for me? And you'll be surprised how much the door will be opening fast, because if you know what you're talking about, and again, you're not scared, so you're just knocking at their door, already they're going to be starting to pay attention. And if you knock the first job, then after that, it's just a question that every 6 months or every year, try to find something that perhaps will be, more fitting the direction that you want to take, or perhaps this one will be the winner one for you. But yeah, that would be my ABCD how to find a job in crypto.
I love that. I love that that step-by-step guide. I think that's really important for like people to hear, because it does take to find the right opportunities and the best opportunities. It does take time. You can't just apply for things online and just hope that you're going to get a job, because you're going to be up against people who are really, really passionate about working in this industry, right? And if you're a company hiring, most companies will always, especially in Web3 specifically, really, a lot of the companies will hire based on how passionate and how like uh, crypto native is the phrase, right, that people use, like how crypto native someone is, and like if someone knows exactly how, like using lending protocols as an example, if someone knows exactly how they work, the ins and outs, that kind of thing, but they don't necessarily have quite as much experience as someone who has
Mm.
no idea about how they work but might be good at the job. I don't know. I've seen a lot of projects go for the person who just knows a lot about the protocols themselves and like knows a lot about the inside of them and how they work, and they can think, oh, we can teach the skill, but we can't teach the passion. So
Yeah,
you are up against people. That's not a hard and fast rule, but it happens often, like very often. Um,
definitely, you're right. And I mean, it's a brilliant point that you're highlighting there, because it actually gives me the chance to provide another advice, which is don't try to fast track your way into going on some website that have like some job offers, because you're not going to nail any of them at the beginning. If you don't have any experience in crypto, and you like, again, it doesn't matter, you're going to go on those websites, they're going to say like, oh, there's a job at Coinbase, there's a job at this project, like, they're going to look at your resume and they're going to say this guy is trash. That's not how you're going to land a job. It doesn't work this way. And
yeah,
the only way it works is, like I say, for me, if I wanted to find a job, then I could go to these recruiters and whatever, and I just say, look, I worked 6, 7, 8 years in this space. I did this, I did this, I work with them. I'm friend with this. I just do some name dropping and I can land a job. But you don't get to do that at the beginning. So at the beginning, like I say, forget about these recruiters, forget about these platforms that tell you job opportunity. You will not find a job. The best way to find a job is the ABCD that I said. Because as you say, I'm right. Let's say that in my community, Hive is super, super technical. Not a lot of people, well, nobody actually can say, like, oh, I used to work at a company that does exactly the same thing. It doesn't exist. But
yeah,
if I, if there's a guy in this chat who's like a 20 years old who happened to just really like what we're building and reading the document and the white paper like over and over again and doing his research, and he knows exactly how DA work and how it can spread and with who they could do business, and this guy is just in my Discord dropping suggestion and over again, I'm like, "Bro, this guy knows what he's talking about. That's impressive." I don't care if he never finishes his elementary school. I will be offering him a job. So, would you like to be an intern? You know what? Because I think you have like the passion, the drive, and you care enough and you understand enough so that I could go get like this ex employee that used to work at Coinbase or Binance. The likeliness that this guy will understand data the way this guy does is near zero. So the guy at Binance will have phenomenal contact book, but so do I. So I don't need his contact book. What I need is somebody who really understands and cares about what we're building, so that he's going to be able to understand something that this Binance guy could, I could try to teach him for 4 years. He's never going to fully understand because he's not about that life.
mm,
So yeah, that's definitely the way to go. This ABCD step that I say, I said it to my cousin, but I would say to anybody else in the world who would like to enter this space. And if you care enough, I'd say within 3 to 4 months, you're gonna be able to land a job. If you full time just read and learn and talk, I sincerely believe 3 to 4 months is what somebody needs.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. Like if someone's super passionate about it and it's all they want to do, and they live, eat, breathe it. Uh, yeah, no, I think you're right. There's plenty of platforms out there where you can find the smaller projects that don't have billions in TVL, right? Like if you look on like DeFi Llama, for example, you can
Hmm.
pull up a list of every lending protocol that's on DeFi Llama, and you can go to the bottom of the list and say, well, who's got 200, 300, 400k, a million TVL? Like find the smaller projects that are way more likely to like give you that opportunity and give you that chance. That's just like DeFi, for example. I'd be looking on there if I was looking for a job to find those smaller projects to approach. But there's tons of different websites like that in
Yep.
Web3. Like all the data, all the information is out there. You've just got to do your research and track it down, really.
Yeah, well, DeFi Lemma is a great advice. That's definitely my place of choosing. So yeah, I think I'd do the same thing, right? So the first thing is probably you want to be aware of which blockchain raised some money. So you just go on like some fundraise news channel, and you're gonna see like, okay, this blockchain just raised 5 million. This blockchain just raised 2 million, 10 millions. And if it's a new blockchain, you know that there's gonna be a bunch of new application lending on these blockchains. And so then, like I say, I would go on DeFi Llama, type the name of this blockchain, and now you're going to see like, okay, here's are the project that already exists, and from there you can have also a vision of like who are going to be the next project coming in. And once you get like, you know that all these are everything is new. The ecosystem is new. Their project is new. There's nobody really to support aside from airdrop hunters at the beginning, but it's all right. That's exactly what you want because, like I say, they have very limited amount of good candidate that these guys can hire unless like they're incredibly rich. Because the people that are really experienced in this space, they tend to exchange each other from one company to another. There's like the higher level of like top companies, and so you exchange yourself between these. But those just launching, normally they have to start from the bottom. So very unlikely that they're gonna get one of the top guy. They have to start with what they have, and what matters the most, like I say, is passion and knowledge. If you have that, then you can be a very good representative for this company.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think to go hand in hand with that as well, if you're posting your thoughts, say you've done all this research, you understand lending protocols. We keep using that example, but say you know lending protocols inside and out, and you don't have to have thousands of followers, but you're posting your thoughts on Twitter, for example, or X, whatever we're supposed to call it these days, X. Posting it on there. Let's say you post on LinkedIn as well, because I do think there are still quite a few people on LinkedIn, still people using it. If you are learning all this stuff and you're kind of talking through your journey, talking through your thoughts on things, like new protocols get launched and you write a short blog about it or a short post about it, about like your thoughts, like how it differs, why it's important, like what the changes are, like how that differs to Aave or Morpho or whatever it might be. That kind of stuff is great. Like then when you reach out to the founders or reach out to the team and say, look, I'm super passionate about this. It's all I've been writing about for the last 4 months. Like you can see every single post I've ever written is all up there, and like I'm so into this.
Mm-hmm.
It just adds such a weight behind your application when you go to do it. Like you don't need to be working in the space to like add value to the space. And I think posting and building that like personal brand is a super important thing to do alongside all of this. Like post your journey, you'll be surprised like the conversations you can get into just off the back of that. Slightly different level, but I know someone who got a VP of engineering role at a very well known Web3 project because he was posting videos on YouTube about like no code tools, AI platforms, smart contracts, like doing almost like tutorial videos on YouTube. And the founders saw it and said, we love what you're talking about. Do you want to come and run our engineering function for us? So like
I
it shows
think
how
I know who
powerful
this is.
shows how
Yeah, yeah.
powerful shows how powerful it can be.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of
so
couple of success story in the space, very similar to that. Like I said, there's a lot of people even that I know. The X slash Twitter example you gave is phenomenal and something that I haven't done enough. But I know, God, I know some people that are now friends of mine that probably are even more influential than I am. Just like on the general, like they have a reaching power, phenomenal reaching power, and these guys never build anything. Like they don't know
yeah,
nothing about how a project run. All they do is they share their thought, and they do so religiously every single day. And they put some effort into that, and they have phenomenal reach. They know all the people I know after years of building, and just because, like I say, they don't know how to build. They have opinion, and they're not afraid of sharing it. And at some point, if you're saying something that is relevant, people care.
yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
You're right. That was your point, man.
Well, Chris, you've shared some brilliant advice today. Thank you very much for coming on the pod. Really, really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of actionable advice there that people can listen to, take away, put into practice. It was great to hear a little bit more about what you guys are building as well at Hive. Um, if people listening want to find out more information about you, about the project, about the team, is Twitter the best place to go to? Is it the direct like project website that's better? Where's the best place?
Well, Twitter works. The website works. You can the website is known as HyveDA.xyz. So Hive is HYVE DA.xyz. That's the website. I mean, there's tons of reading that can be done, but again, it's it's some pretty technical reading. So it's really infrastructure, primary infrastructure. But yeah, anybody that is willing to go there. Otherwise, from the website, you can find the Twitter, and there's some pretty big announcement coming up soon. So really, the project is just at the beginning. There's very few that is known about us because there's very few that we decided to put publicly. But now we're ready to do. So actually, a lot of things that I've said in this podcast is kind of like not even out there. So very soon we're gonna start unveiling to the world, and things will get interesting. But it's still very early, so yeah, it's an exciting road ahead. Thank you for having me. And like I say, I just speak. I have no methodology to what I'm answering, so hopefully it will be useful to some people. And if not, well, again, it was just a great conversation. So always a pleasure to see you, Jack.
Yeah, you too, Chris. You too. Yeah, thanks again, and I'll catch up with you soon.
That's awesome. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Cheers.